Steve Harvey was in the middle of reading survey results when something happened that had never occurred in his 12 years of hosting Family Feud. What started as a routine taping with a church group from Memphis turned into a moment so powerful that Steve abandoned the game entirely, left his position at the podium, and did something that would leave everyone in the studio, including Steve himself, in tears. The Family Feud studio in Atlanta was buzzing with its usual energy. Two families stood ready to compete. But no one could have predicted that within the hour the show would completely stop, the rules would be thrown out, and Steve Harvey would make a decision that would change one grandmother's life forever. The Mount Zion Baptist Church team from Memphis, Tennessee, had arrived early that morning, their church van pulling into the studio lot at 6 a.m. They'd driven through the night, taking turns at the wheel, singing hymns to stay awake. At the center of their group was Lillian Washington, 72 years old, wearing her best purple church suit that she'd bought specifically for this occasion. What the producers didn't know, what even Steve didn't know yet, was that backstage, someone was waiting. Someone who had flown 7,000 miles to be there. Someone whose appearance would cause Steve Harvey to do something he'd never done before. Completely abandon a Family Feud game in progress. "All right, all right, all right," Steve called out as the cameras rolled.
"We got the Mount Zion Baptist Church family going up against the Thompson family from Chicago. Y'all ready to play Family Feud?"
The church ladies were radiant with excitement. Lillian Washington stood at the center, her silver hair styled perfectly, her church pin gleaming under the studio lights. Beside her stood Reverend Patricia Mills, the associate pastor, Deaconess Ruby Johnson, Sister Margaret Coleman, and young Jasmine Roberts, who at 28 was the youngest member of their team. During the commercial break before they started, Steve made his rounds, greeting both families. When he reached Lillian, something about her presence made him pause. There was a strength in her stance, but also something else, a weight she carried with grace. "Miss Lillian, you got that glow about you," Steve said. "But I can see something else, too. You carrying something heavy on your heart today?" Lillian's smile wavered just slightly. "Oh, Mr. Harvey, I'm just missing my baby. But the Lord is good, and I'm here with my church family." "Your baby?" Steve asked gently. "My grandson, Marcus," Lillian said, her voice catching slightly. "He's 25 now, but he'll always be my baby. I raised him since he was 10 years old, after his parents was no longer with us because of that car incident." The studio grew quieter. Steve's expression softened. "Where's Marcus now?" "He's serving our country, Mr. Harvey. Air Force. He's stationed at Kadena Air Base in Japan." "Haven't seen him in." She paused, calculating 14 months and 6 days. "But who's counting, right?" Steve put a gentle hand on her shoulder.
14 months is a long time, Miss Lillian."
"He's doing important work," Lillian said, straightening up. "He's an aircraft maintenance specialist. Keeps those big planes flying safe. He video calls every Sunday after church when he can, but—" Her voice trailed off. "But it's not the same," Steve finished for her. "No, sir, it's not the same. I just want to hug my baby. Been dreaming about him walking through my door. Some nights I cook his favorite meal, my special fried chicken with mac and cheese, just hoping somehow he'll surprise me. Silly, I know." "That's not silly at all," Steve said softly. "That's love." Reverend Patricia stepped forward. "What Miss Lillian won't tell you is that she writes him every single day. Real letters, not just emails. Has been since the day he left for basic training." "Every day?" Steve asked, amazed. "Every single day," Ruby Johnson confirmed. "She brings them to the post office every Friday. Must have sent over 1,000 letters by now." Lillian blushed. "It's just so he knows home is still here. So he knows somebody's thinking about him every single day. I tell him about the church, about the youth program, about Mrs. Henderson's new grandbaby. Just ordinary things, but I want him to feel connected." Steve was visibly moved. "Tell me more about Marcus." Lillian's face lit up.
Oh, where do I start? He was such a good boy. After we lost his parents, he could have gone down a dark path. 10 years old, and suddenly without his parents.
But he threw himself into church, into school, graduated valedictorian from his high school, got his degree in aerospace engineering from Tennessee State, could have taken any job he wanted. But he chose to serve.
Why the Air Force? Steve asked.
His daddy was Air Force, Lillian said proudly. Marcus barely remembers him, but he keeps his daddy's picture in his wallet. Said he wanted to follow in his footsteps, make him proud. Make me proud. I bet you're plenty proud already.
Every single day,
Lillian confirmed. He's stationed at Kadena, working on those 15 Eagles. Sends me pictures of him in his uniform. Lord, he looks so much like his daddy it takes my breath away. Sister Margaret spoke up. Show him the picture, Lillian. Lillian reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photo. It showed a young man in Air Force blues, standing in front of an aircraft, smiling broadly. Steve looked at it carefully.
Handsome young man, Steve said. When was this taken?
His first day at Kadena, Lillian said. 13 months ago. He was so excited. Said the base was beautiful, right by the ocean. He sends me pictures of the sunrise sometimes. Says it reminds him of watching the sunrise with me on our front porch. Steve handed the photo back carefully. You raised a good man, Miss Lillian. I did my best, Lillian said quietly. After the incident, it was just me and him. I was 57 years old, thought I was done raising children. But God had other plans. Marcus became my whole world. And now, she paused, composing herself. Now he's serving the world, Steve finished. Yes, sir. And I'm proud. Lord knows I'm proud. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss him every second of every day. Especially with my birthday coming up next week. It'll be the second one he's missed. Jasmine, the youngest of their group, added, Miss Lillian won't say it, but she's turning 73 next Tuesday. The whole church has been planning a surprise party. Jasmine, Lillian scolded gently, it's not about me. Yes, it is, Reverend Patricia said firmly. This woman has given everything to our church, to our community, to raising that wonderful young man. She deserves to be celebrated. Steve looked at his producer off stage, who gave him the signal to wrap up and start the game. But Steve wasn't quite ready. Miss Lillian, what would you say to Marcus if he were here right now? Lillian's eyes filled with tears. I'd tell him I love him. I'd tell him his mama and daddy would be so proud. I'd tell him to be safe. And I'd hold him so tight he'd have to beg me to let go. Steve nodded, wiping his own eyes. All right. Let's play Family Feud. But, Miss Lillian, we're playing for Marcus today. Deal? Deal, Mr. Harvey. The game began, and the Mount Zion ladies were on fire. They won the first round easily, their church fellowship hall viewing sessions clearly paying off. During the second round, Steve noticed Lillian kept touching her pocket, and he realized she was checking her phone. You expecting a call? Steve asked during a brief pause. Lillian looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, Mr. Harvey. It's just that it's Thursday afternoon here, which means it's Friday morning in Japan. Marcus sometimes calls before his shift starts. I know I shouldn't have my phone on, but you keep that phone on, Steve said firmly. Any grandmother waiting to hear from her grandson in the military keeps her phone on in my studio. The game continued. The church ladies were doing remarkably well, their years of watching together showing in their teamwork. They won the second round too, and the energy in the studio was building. It was during the third round that something shifted. Steve was at the podium, ready to read the next question, when his executive producer, Marcus Freeman, appeared at the edge of the stage. This was unusual. Freeman never came out during taping unless something serious was happening. Freeman whispered something to one of the production assistants, who then hurried over to Steve. She whispered in his ear, and Steve's eyes went wide. He looked at Lillian, then back at his producer, who nodded. Steve set down his cards. The studio audience murmured, confused. This wasn't part of the show. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steve said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes in life, moments happen that are bigger than any game, bigger than any prize money. Sometimes God orchestrates things in ways we can't imagine." Lillian looked concerned. "Is everything all right, Mr. Harvey?" Steve walked away from the podium, something he never did during a game. He approached Lillian directly. "Miss Lillian, you talked about writing your grandson every day. You talked about missing him. You talked about wanting to hug him." "Yes, sir," Lillian said, confused by the shift. "What you don't know," Steve continued, "is that sometimes when we're taping this show, we get some special visitors. Sometimes people want to surprise their loved ones." Lillian's hand went to her heart. "Mr. Harvey, what are you saying?" Steve turned toward the side of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senior Airman Marcus Washington, United States Air Force, all the way from Kadena Air Base, Japan." The studio doors opened, and there he was, 6 feet tall, wearing his dress blues, looking exactly like the photo Lillian carried, but somehow more real, more present. Marcus Washington stood there for a moment, his eyes locked on his grandmother. "Granny," he said, his voice carrying across the studio. Lillian's knees buckled. Her church sisters caught her, held her up, as a sound escaped her that was part sob, part joy, part 13 months of missing her baby boy. "Marcus, my baby? Is that really you?" Marcus crossed the stage in quick strides, and Lillian met him halfway. The embrace that followed was so powerful, so full of love and longing, finally satisfied, that there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Steve had to turn away, overcome with emotion. "I'm here, Granny," Marcus whispered, but his mic picked it up. "I'm here." "How?" Lillian pulled back to look at his face, touching it like she couldn't believe he was real. "How are you here? You're supposed to be in Japan. You have duty. You have." Marcus smiled through his own tears. "I've been working on this for months. Saved up leave time, worked extra shifts. My commanding officer, Colonel Rodriguez, he knew how important this was. When the show reached out to the base about your appearance, he made sure I could be here." "The show knew?" Lillian looked at Steve, who nodded. "We've been planning this for weeks," Steve admitted. "Marcus reached out to us when he heard your church group had been selected. He wanted to surprise you, but not just surprise you," Marcus added. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. The studio gasped collectively. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Lillian asked. Marcus didn't go down on one knee. This wasn't that kind of moment. Instead, he opened the box to reveal a beautiful silver locket. "Granny, you've worn the same locket for as long as I can remember. The one with Mama and Daddy's picture. But the chain broke last year, and I know you haven't had the heart to replace it." Lillian's hand went to her neck, where indeed no locket hung. "I had this made in Japan," Marcus continued. "It's got 3 pictures inside. Mama and Daddy on one side, you and me on the other, and in the middle." He opened it to show her. "All 4 of us, from that last Christmas before the accident." "Oh, Marcus," Lillian breathed. "But that's not all," Marcus said. He turned to Steve. "Mr. Harvey, I need to tell you something about my grandmother that she'd never tell you herself." Steve nodded. "Go ahead, son." "This woman," Marcus said, his voice strong but emotional, "didn't just raise me. She saved me. When I lost my parents, I was angry at the world, angry at God. But she never let me stay in that dark place. She dragged me to church every Sunday. Even when I fought her, she sat with me through homework every night, even after working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. She taught me that service to others is the highest calling." He turned back to Lillian. "You know why I really joined the Air Force, Granny? It wasn't just to follow in Daddy's footsteps. It was because you taught me that we protect and serve those we love. You protected and served me every day for 15 years. Now it's my turn to protect and serve others." The church ladies were crying openly now. Reverend Patricia had her arms around Ruby and Margaret. Young Jasmine was filming everything on her phone, making sure this moment would be preserved forever. "But here's what my grandmother doesn't know," Marcus continued, turning back to Steve. "She thinks I've been in Japan this whole time. But for the last month, I've been in Texas." "Texas?" Lillian gasped. "What were you doing in Texas?" Marcus smiled. "Training for my new assignment. Granny, I got promoted. Staff Sergeant Washington now. But more than that, I got reassigned. Starting next month, I'll be stationed at Memphis Air National Guard Base. I'm coming home, Granny. For good." Lillian's reaction was beyond words. She collapsed against her grandson, sobbing with joy. The entire studio erupted in applause. Steve had to remove his glasses to wipe his eyes properly. "You're coming home?" Lillian managed to ask. "Really home? Memphis home?" "Memphis home," Marcus confirmed. "I'll be working with the 164th Airlift Wing. I'll be home every night. I can come to Sunday service. I can help with the youth program. I can sit on the porch and watch the sunrise with you again." "Oh, thank you, Jesus," Lillian cried out. "Thank you, Lord." Steve gave them several moments before approaching with his microphone. "Staff Sergeant Washington, tell us about this journey." Marcus kept one arm firmly around his grandmother as he spoke. "Mr. Harvey, when I first enlisted, I thought serving my country meant being far from home. But my commander in Japan, Colonel Rodriguez, he told me something that changed my perspective. He said the best airmen are the ones who remember what they're protecting, who stay connected to their why." He looked down at Lillian. "She's my why. This church, this community, they're my why. So when the position opened up in Memphis, I fought for it. Took every training, every certification. I wanted to come home, not just as Marcus, but as someone who could make a difference here." "And the month in Texas?" Steve asked. "Advanced training for the new position, but also," Marcus grinned, "also gave me time to help plan something else." He turned to his grandmother. "Granny, you said your birthday is next Tuesday?" "Yes, baby. Well, the church has been planning a party. But what they didn't tell you is that I've been helping. We've got people coming from all over. Cousin Michael from Detroit, Aunt Sarah from Houston. Even your best friend from high school, Miss Catherine, is flying in from Florida." Lillian was overwhelmed. "Marcus, how did you—" "Reverend Patricia and I have been coordinating for months," Marcus explained. "We wanted to celebrate you properly. The woman who raised me, who served her community for over 40 years, who never asks for anything for herself." Steve turned to his producer again. "You know what? We're done with the game for today." The audience murmured in surprise. Steve never stopped a game in progress. No, hear me out," Steve continued. "Sometimes moments are bigger than games. Mount Zion Baptist Church, Thompson family, here's what we're gonna do. Both families are getting the $20,000 prize. But for the Mount Zion family, we're gonna add something special." He turned to Lillian and Marcus. "Staff Sergeant Washington, you said you're going to be working with the youth program at church?" "Yes, sir. Granny always said the youth are our future. I want to give back the way she gave to me." Steve nodded. "Then the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation is donating $50,000 to Mount Zion's youth program in honor of Miss Lillian Washington and her service to her community." The church ladies gasped. Lillian nearly fainted again. "Mr. Harvey, we can't accept." Reverend Patricia started. "Yes, you can," Steve said firmly. "And you will. Because this is what we do. We support each other. We lift each other up. And when someone like Miss Lillian spends her life pouring into others, it's our turn to pour back." Marcus had something else to add. "Mr. Harvey, there's one more thing. Granny, remember how you always said you wanted to see where I was stationed? How you wanted to understand my world? Lillian nodded, confused. Well, as part of my transfer, I accrued a lot of airline miles, enough for 2 round-trip tickets anywhere in the world. I was thinking, before I start my new position, maybe we could take that trip. You and me. Go to Japan. See Mount Fuji. Visit the base where I served. Show you the sunrise I've been photographing for you. Marcus, I can't travel all the way to Japan. I'm 72 years old. 73 next week, Marcus corrected with a grin. And you're the youngest 73-year-old I know. Besides, when have you ever backed down from an adventure? The Thompson family, who had been watching all of this unfold, approached. Mrs. Thompson, the matriarch of their family, spoke up. We've been blessed to witness this today. The prize money is wonderful, but seeing this reunion, seeing this love, that's the real prize. Her son added, My brother's in the Navy, been deployed for 8 months. This hits home for us too. Steve brought both families together. You know what? Let's finish this show differently. Instead of competing against each other, let's celebrate together. We've got a military homecoming, a birthday coming up, and 2 beautiful families here. Let's make this a party. What happened next was unprecedented in Family Feud history. The 2 families mixed together, not as competitors, but as one group, celebrating a reunion. The producers brought out a cake. They'd apparently been prepared for this moment. Welcome Home Marcus was written in blue frosting. As they were setting up for the cake, Marcus pulled Steve aside. Mr. Harvey, I need to thank you. When I reached out to the show, I didn't know if you'd even respond. But your team made this happen. You gave me the chance to surprise the woman who gave up everything for me. Steve put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. Son, let me tell you something. I've done this show for 12 years. I've given away millions in prize money. But moments like this is why I'm really here. To bring families together, to celebrate love, to show America what really matters. Marcus nodded, then said, There's one more thing I need to do. He walked back to his grandmother, who was being congratulated by both families. Granny, remember how you used to make me sing in the youth choir, even though I was terrible? Lillian laughed. You weren't terrible, baby. You just needed practice. Well, I've been practicing. Marcus cleared his throat. While I was in Japan, when I got homesick, I'd sing the hymns you taught me. They kept me connected to home, to you. He began to sing, his rich baritone filling the studio. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Lillian joined him, her voice harmonizing with his. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. One by one, the church ladies joined in, then the Thompson family, then Steve himself. Soon the entire studio was singing, a spontaneous moment of unity and grace. When the song ended, there wasn't a sound, except for sniffles and quiet crying. Steve took a moment to compose himself before speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is what Family Feud is really about. Not the game, not the money, but family. Family by blood, family by choice, family by faith. Miss Lillian raised this young man alone after tragedy struck. She poured her life into him, and now he's come home to pour back into his community. He turned to the cameras. If you've got military family overseas, call them, write them, let them know they're not forgotten. And when they come home, celebrate them. Not just with parades and thank you for your service, but with real support, real community, real love. As the show wrapped up, Marcus never left his grandmother's side. They cut the cake together, her hand over his, as they held the knife. The photos taken that day would end up on the wall at Mount Zion Baptist Church, right next to the pictures of all the young people Lillian had mentored over the years. Granny, Marcus said as they were preparing to leave the studio, I need to tell you something. Every one of those letters you sent, I kept them. All of them. On my hardest days, when I felt far from home, I'd read them.
They kept me going.
Every letter? Lillian asked. All 1,143 of them, Marcus confirmed. I numbered them. They're my most precious possession. Steve overheard this and made one final decision. You know what? We're going to do something else. Miss Lillian, you've been writing letters for over a year. Staff Sergeant Washington, you've been keeping them. That's a love story that needs to be shared. The Harvey Foundation is going to work with you both to turn those letters into a book. A book about love, faith, and the power of staying connected. All proceeds will go to supporting military families. Neither Lillian nor Marcus could speak. They just held each other, overwhelmed by the generosity and the possibilities. As the families finally prepared to leave, the Thompson family and the Mount Zion family exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch. Mrs. Thompson's son got Marcus's information to pass along to his brother in the Navy. New connections were formed, born out of a moment of pure joy. 3 weeks later, when the episode aired, it became one of the most watched episodes in Family Feud history. The response was overwhelming. Military families from across the country shared their own stories of reunion and separation. Letters poured into the show, many from grandparents, raising their grandchildren, seeing themselves in Lillian's story. The book of letters, titled Dear Marcus, A Grandmother's Love Across the Miles, was published 6 months later. It became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to a foundation supporting military families and grandparents raising grandchildren. At Lillian's 73rd birthday party, held at Mount Zion Baptist Church, over 300 people attended. Marcus stood to give a toast, wearing his uniform, his eyes never leaving his grandmother's face. 13 months ago, he said, I thought serving my country meant being far from home, but Granny taught me something different. She taught me that service starts at home. That love is the greatest force in the universe. That family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who never gives up on you. He raised his glass to Lillian Washington, who showed up every day for 15 years, who never gave up on a scared, angry little boy, who taught me that grace isn't just a song, it's a way of life. Happy birthday, Granny. Thank you for saving my life. The party went on late into the night, with music and laughter and joy. Marcus was true to his word. He was there every Sunday at Mount Zion, working with the youth, sharing his story, continuing the legacy his grandmother had started. And every morning, just as he'd promised, he sat with Lillian on her front porch, watching the sunrise. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, grateful for the simple gift of being together. The phone call that had never come that day at Family Feud, the one Lillian had been hoping for, turned out to be unnecessary, because something better had happened. Instead of a phone call from 7,000 miles away, she got her grandson standing in front of her, coming home for good. Steve Harvey later said in an interview that in all his years of television, few moments had moved him like the reunion of Lillian and Marcus Washington. It reminded me that our military families sacrifice in ways we don't always see. Not just those who serve, but those who wait at home, those who raise children alone, those who keep the faith when keeping the faith seems impossible. The Mount Zion Baptist Church Youth Program flourished with the donation and Marcus's involvement. Young people who had heard Miss Lillian's stories about her grandson finally got to meet him, and many were inspired to pursue their own dreams of service and education. But perhaps the most beautiful outcome was the simplest one. Every day, Lillian Washington woke up knowing her grandson was home. Not for a visit, not for a holiday, but home. The letters stopped because they were no longer needed. The boy she'd raised had become a man who chose to come back and serve the community that had shaped him. Sometimes the greatest surprises aren't elaborate or complex. Sometimes they're as simple as a grandmother getting to hug her grandson again, as simple as a young man choosing to bring his service home, as simple as a community rallying around one of their own. Steve Harvey stopped the show that day because he recognized that some moments are too precious for games, some reunions too powerful for points, some love stories too beautiful to rush. In choosing to abandon the format and celebrate the moment, he gave America something more valuable than entertainment. He gave them hope. Hope that families, separated by service and duty, can reunite. Hope that love transcends distance. Hope that sometimes, just sometimes, our deepest prayers get answered in the most unexpected ways. The Family Feud stage had seen thousands of families compete over the years. But on that Thursday in April, it witnessed something different. Not a competition, but a completion. A circle closing. A prayer answered. A grandmother's unwavering love rewarded with the one thing she wanted most. Her grandson walking through those studio doors, coming home at last.